They laughed when he said he'd build something from nothing. They mocked him when his hands bled. They walked away when the fire burned too hot. But here's what they didn't understand. Every masterpiece you've ever admired, it wasn't born in comfort. It was forged in fire, shaped by pressure, perfected through pain. This is the story of a man who learned the hardest truth about success and why everything you think, about achieving greatness might be backwards. His name was Marcus, and at 34 years old, he was a failure by every definition society gave him. 3 failed businesses, a garage filled with half-finished projects, a bank account that screamed louder than any alarm clock ever could, and worst of all, the look in his father's eyes that said, "I told you so." But on one particular Tuesday morning, something different happened. Marcus sat in his garage, surrounded by his failures, and picked up a piece of scrap metal, not for any grand purpose, not for some brilliant idea, simply because his hands needed something to do while his mind wrestled with giving up. He began to hammer it. One strike, then another, then another. And here's where the transformation began. Not with motivation, not with inspiration, not with some magical moment of clarity, but with rage. Pure, unfiltered, burning rage at every person who doubted him, at every opportunity that slipped away, at every version of himself that quit too soon. He hammered that metal like it owed him something, like it held every excuse, every fear, every maybe tomorrow that had poisoned his potential. Hours passed. His hands blistered. His shoulders screamed. But he didn't stop, because something primal had awakened inside him. Now here's what nobody tells you about transformation. It doesn't happen in the light. It happens in the fire. Marcus didn't wake up the next day suddenly disciplined. He didn't suddenly have clarity about his purpose. He didn't magically become a different person. But he did have one thing, a piece of metal he'd shaped with his bare hands. And it wasn't beautiful, it wasn't perfect. But it was proof. Proof that when everything else failed, his hands still worked. His will still functioned. His fire still burned. So he did it again the next day. And the next, and the next. He taught himself blacksmithing through YouTube videos and burned fingers. He learned metallurgy through trial and error, mostly error. He built a proper forge from scraps and street finds. People in his neighborhood started noticing. What's that guy doing in his garage? Is he crazy? Why is he doing this? But Marcus had learned something profound. The world respects obsession more than it respects permission. He stopped asking if his work was good enough. He stopped waiting for validation. He stopped measuring his worth by other people's understanding. He simply forged. Knives, sculptures, tools, art, each piece slightly better than the last. Each failure teaching him something the successes never could. 6 months passed, then a year. His hands, once soft and uncertain, became calloused and confident. His eye, once scattered and distracted, became focused and precise. But the real transformation? It wasn't in the metal. It was in the mirror. Years after that Tuesday morning, Marcus received a commission that changed everything. A museum wanted a centerpiece sculpture, something that represented resilience, transformation, the human spirit. They gave him 6 months and a budget that finally validated every hour he'd spent bleeding in that garage. But here's the twist that makes this story worth telling. The pressure almost broke him again, because success doesn't eliminate fear. It amplifies it. Now he had something to lose. Now he had expectations to meet. Now he had proof that failure would be public, permanent, recorded. The old Marcus would have frozen, would have sabotaged himself, would have found a way to retreat back into comfortable failure. But this Marcus, he did something different. He went back to that first piece of scrap metal, the one he'd hammered in rage and desperation, the ugly, imperfect, beautiful proof that he could create something from nothing. And he remembered the lesson the fire had taught him. You are not shaped by your comfort. You are shaped by your heat, by your pressure, by your willingness to be hammered into something stronger than you were yesterday. He created the sculpture, poured everything he'd learned, every failure, every doubt, every moment of rage and hope into the metal. And when it was unveiled, it stopped people in their tracks. Not because it was perfect, but because you could feel the fire in it. You could sense the struggle. You could see the transformation frozen in steel. Critics called it raw, honest, unapologetically human, but Marcus knew what it really was. It was every version of himself he'd had to burn away to become who he was meant to be. So here's what I need you to understand right now watching this. You are that piece of metal, raw, unformed, filled with potential that only fire can reveal. And life is going to hammer you. It's going to heat you until you think you'll melt. It's going to pressure you until you think you'll shatter. Good. That's not punishment. That's the process. Every successful person you admire, they're not special because they avoided the fire. They're special because they stayed in it when everyone else ran out. They let themselves be shaped, hammered, refined. And so can you. Your garage might not have a forge. Your struggle might not be with metal. But the principle is universal. Stop running from the heat. Stop avoiding the hammer. Stop waiting for transformation to be comfortable. Pick up your scrap metal, whatever that means for you, and start hammering. If this story lit a fire in you, that's not an accident. That's a signal. Subscribe to Quietly Loud Quotes for more stories that challenge you, inspire you, and remind you that your greatest days aren't behind you. They're being forged right now. Hit that like button if you're ready to stop making excuses and start making masterpieces. And drop a comment telling me, what's the scrap metal in your life that you're finally ready to transform? Your Quietly Loud starts today, not tomorrow, not when you're ready. Today.